What's up, guys? Welcome back to another daily Bible reading snapshot. Today we're looking at Proverbs 5 and 6, and then we're looking at 1 Corinthians 14, at least the beginning of 1 Corinthians 14 in the New Testament. So here in Proverbs chapter 5, we are going to encounter one huge theme we're going to see in the book of Proverbs, especially today and tomorrow in the daily Bible reading, and that's the theme of staying away from the adulteress. The lady who's in this book presented again and again as someone who's trying to tempt this young man into sin. Now, there's a lot of applications to that, but specifically what you're going to see here is a description of temptation. Proverbs 5 talks about the way that this young man is going to be tempted. And it's like a father telling the son, hey, this is how you're going to be tempted. Look at this temptation. Look at how you're going to be tempted so that you know how to fight this temptation when it comes. And the biggest way to fight this temptation of this sexual sin is to run away from it. And also, verse 15 of Proverbs chapter 5 is to enjoy this good gift of sex in the relationship between husband and wife. And that's really what we're going to see here in Proverbs 15, 16, or verses 15, 16, all the way to verse 20. That's one of the biggest ways that this father is telling the son, you need to fight sin by finding this fulfillment in the right place. The world is going to give a million ways for people to find that kind of fulfillment, but God says, no, find it in your spouse here. And then look at verse 21. This applies to all types of sin, not just this particular sin. It says, for the man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all of his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin, and he dies for lack of discipline. And because of his great folly, he is led astray. That applies to any type of sin, but especially this type of sin, that the wicked people are ensnared by their own sin. That means they're trapped by their own sin. They think they're the boss, they think they're in control, and they think they're doing so great because they can do whatever they want. The truth is, the sin in their life is entrapping them, enslaving them, and they're really obedient slaves to their master, which is the master of sin in their lives. Now, Proverbs chapter 6 goes on, and it talks about that a little bit at the end of Proverbs 6. You're going to get that theme again. But in the middle, it talks about, hey, make sure that you're a person who keeps your word. Make sure you're a person who, when you make promises, that you actually fulfill those promises. And one of the most important things for you to do, especially, remember, father to a young man, is to not be a lazy person. Obviously, lazy people can't really keep their word if they're saying, I'll work hard and I'll do certain things for you. Proverbs 6 makes it very clear that you need to be a hardworking person. That is a wise characteristic if you're diligent, if you're somebody who works hard for the Lord. Verse 6 says, go to the ant, O sluggard, which means you're supposed to look, if you're a lazy person, you're supposed to look at an ant, a tiny little creature, and see that in that tiny little creature, we see a little bit of God's glory because this little tiny creature works hard. He doesn't have to be told what to do. He doesn't have to be told to go clean his room. He doesn't have to be told to brush his teeth or make his bed or whatever the chores might be going on in your house, right? You don't have to be told to do that. You just do them. You don't have to be told to work hard at work. You don't have to be told to be a good student. You don't have to be told to do these things because you're a hard worker. Now, that's what wisdom is, and that's what this wise person is describing to his son. Make sure that you look to these good examples and don't be a sluggard, which is a word that's a funny word that we find in the book of Proverbs, but it means don't be a lazy person. Now, he goes on, there's so much good that's right here in this book of Proverbs, and this is what's going to feel like every day. There's so much to cover. We'll only really be able to focus on a few things. But a section that I do want you to really focus on is Proverbs 6, verses 16, 17, 18, and 19. Here's why. Because it gives in very clear terms certain things that God hates. Now, you might not think of this often, but there are certain things that God hates a lot. And those things that God hates might actually show up in your life. And if they do, you need to be very, very careful about them and say, I want to fight that type of sin that God hates. What does God hate? First thing that he hates are haughty eyes. That means people who look down on others. Haughty means prideful. Haughty eyes, you can imagine a prideful look, looking down pridefully on people. God hates it when we pridefully look down on other people. Second thing he hates is a lying tongue. People who use their mouths to deceive other people. God hates that. I don't want to be a person who's lying. I don't want to be a deceiver because it says God hates that. Number 3 is hands that shed innocent blood. That means people who are going out and harming people who've done nothing wrong against them. God hates that. There's so much shedding of innocent blood in our world today, and it's important to remember that God hates that. Every time it happens, God hates it. Next thing is that God hates is a heart that makes plans to do evil things. A person who literally stands there and waits and thinks, what evil thing can I do? Okay, I can do this evil thing, and then maybe after that evil thing, I can plan to do this evil thing to this person. It says God hates a heart that is planning to do evil. The fifth thing is feet that run towards evil, right? This is kind of on the other side of a heart that plans evil. That's not the only thing God hates. God also hates it when people are quick in their actions to do what is evil and do what is wrong. God hates that. The sixth thing is God hates a false witness that breathes out lies, which think about that. You had lying twice here. God hates lying. If you think lying's not a big deal, you don't know God very well, because God thinks it's a big deal, okay? God hates lying lips, and he hates a false witness. It literally shows up twice in his list of the 7 things he hates most. It literally shows up twice. I really want you to think about that. You need to take lying and honesty so seriously, because God takes it so seriously. It goes on, the last thing that he hates is someone who sows discord among brothers, which means somebody who creates division in a group that should be united. God hates that. If it's in your family, if it's in your church, God hates it when people cause division. Now, looking at that list of things that God hates, I want you to think through, wow, if God hates those things, I need to hate those things too. I need to make sure that they never show up in my life. I need to fight those temptations as much as I possibly can. So that's some important things to take away from this reading in Proverbs today. Today we're looking at 1 Corinthians 14 in the New Testament, which is a confusing passage to some people. We don't talk about it all that often because some things that are described here were only happening in the early church. We might see some form of them today, but probably a wrong form. What am I talking about? 2 big things that 1 Corinthians 14 talks about. It talks about prophecy and tongues. Now, those 2 things are very misunderstood today. Prophecy was something that these people did where God would speak through them. Remember, anytime you see the word prophecy, unless it's false prophecy, we see that also in the Bible too, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. We see people who claim to speak from God but don't speak from God. Right? Prophecy were people in these churches that were receiving special revelation from God and speaking it in the church service. Now, you might think, why did that happen? Why was that necessary? Well, it was necessary because the Bible had not been finished yet. Okay, because if we look at this Bible, this is the prophecy. This is the book of prophecy, right? The Old Testament and the New Testament is direct prophecy from God. It's things that God has said for people to know. So it's God's word. That's why we call the Bible God's word. Now, in this church, there were people who were desiring spiritual gifts, which wasn't a bad thing. At the beginning, he actually says, hey, you should desire spiritual gifts, but for what purpose? Why should you desire to be someone who's used in the church? Well, it's because hopefully your desire should be to build others up. That's the main command that's repeated multiple times in 1 Corinthians 14. So the first thing is prophecy. The second thing is tongues. Now you're going to see tongues described a little bit here. Just remember how the book of Acts describes it as well. Tongues was a miracle, a miraculous gift that God gave to the early church to evangelize people that didn't speak the same language as them. So the word tongues is the same word as the word languages. So in our world, the false teachers in our world say that tongues is when they go blah, 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 they babble all around, right? That is not what tongues is. Tongues was a miraculous gift where people could understand the gospel preached to them in a language that they never understood before. Or in fact, actually, it's the other way around. It's that the person speaking would speak and it would be understood by people in their own language. So as you read this, you might be thinking, well, why don't we have prophecy? Why don't we have tongues in our churches today? Well, because we don't need them in our churches today. In other words, you have some people, right? If you have translators, people in your church that are translating the word to other people, that's as close as we got to what tongues is. That's the gift of languages, but that person studied that and knows the language and are doing it. So you're going to look at this and see a lot of different things, but the big thing to take away is Paul's emphasis in this chapter. He says, whenever you think about any gift that you have that you're using in the church, just know the main reason you're using it should be for the benefit of other people, not for yourself. The problem was a lot of people in Corinth wanted to be the people who were talking. They wanted to be the important people. They wanted to be the people who were speaking. And Paul says, look, don't desire that. And just know, he says, I would rather speak 5 words with my mind in order to instruct others than 10,000 words in a tongue. He says, that's not important. What's important is instruction. It's helping other Christians know more truth, and that's what he gets at here. Then we're going to finish this chapter tomorrow, so we're only getting to the beginning, but I want you to see the last verse, which is super important. I think it should be our application to all of this. Verse 20 says, "Brothers, do not be children in your thinking." Don't be like little kids in the way that you think. Be discerning. Be infants. You should be infants in one thing, in evil. Don't be mature in all the sin that you partake in. Be infants in evil, but in your thinking, be mature. Be adult. Be grown up in the way that you can think through these issues. And that's basically what he's telling them. He's like, guys, you should have understood this by now. You should have understood that you're not supposed to hog the spotlight in church. It's not about you. It's about building up other people. So we're going to continue to talk more about that tomorrow. I know there's a lot of questions regarding that, but hopefully what we talked about today has answered a lot of your questions when it comes to 1 Corinthians 14. So thanks for reading with us. We'll see you back tomorrow for another daily Bible reading snapshot.